Super. Okay. I guess we can start. I think I wanted to start by maybe going like around the room and just quickly like introducing yourself, and also talking about when you got into the NFT and the crypto art space, because I know we have like a mixed list of speakers. So I'll go through my order, and the first one is Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having me. So I'm Jason Bailey. I think some people know me as Artnome. It's a blog that I write about the intersection of art and tech. And I wrote an article that said the blockchain art market is here in late 2017. So I was a few years too early, perhaps, but went on to become an early collector and was excited about NFTs as a way of collecting art by other artists and supporting them, but didn't ever think we'd really see a secondary market. So it's been sort of interesting to watch the journey. But I do a little bit of curation and a fair amount of writing and a lot of collecting.
Super. Thanks so much, Jason. And Aleksandra.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So I would say my journey with digital art goes about 6 years ago, when I first started working on partnerships in this space. And I wouldn't say I'm as an OG as Jason. My first mintable work that I tried minting myself was probably last summer. And ever since then, I would say more this year, fell down the rabbit hole. I launched also last year the online digital art gallery, Electric Artifact. So we work a lot, especially now with artists, helping them sort of navigate their career within the NFT space. We curate shows. We also work with platforms, curating exhibitions and selecting artists for sort of unique experiences. And at the same time, I'm also one of the first members of the launch team of the .art domain zone. So for the last 5 years, we've been growing it. So any website .art, you've probably seen a lot of these days. And so it's an exciting time and great to be here.
Super. Thank you so much, Aleksandra. Wade.
Hi guys, my name is Wade. I'm the co-director of Transfer Gallery and the founder of Silicon Ballet, which is a community digital art space. And I'm really excited that I just curated my first show that's involving minted works. It's called Pieces of Me. It's available online. You can check out the link in my bio. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk with you all about what it means to curate within this new economic world that we're living in.
Nice. Thank you, Wade. And Fanny.
Hi, I'm Fanny Lakoubay. I got into the space around 2018 via an NFT project called Snark.art. And I helped various NFT platforms and have been enjoying collecting along the way. And now I do advise collectors and artists who want to enter the space, learn more, and sometimes collect. And it's been a lot of fun to keep the pace going this past few weeks, especially. And I do work on a few side projects. Jason, you did not mention green NFTs, so I will mention it. Happy to be here as well.
Thanks, Fanny. Yeah, sorry about that. Shame on me.
Yeah, you didn't. Thank you, Fanny. And Iskra?
Hi there. My name is Iskra Velitchkova, and I come from data visualization field, and is where I spent my last years there, and in general design information. And I was always in big companies, like working on strategy or vision and design. And then I quit this, and 1 year and a half ago, I decided to turn into art, and I built a project of myself, combining digital art and clay and I don't know, a lot of things. And at the end of last year, I think so long ago, I discovered the NFTs, and I found it it was gathering all my interests in there. So I just get into it, and now I'm starting collecting and also releasing my work, and that's why I'm here, I guess. So thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. Diane.
Hi, everyone, and thanks a lot to Mikael for organizing this discussion. It's very exciting. So I'm actually here wearing two hats. The first one is as a founder of We Are Museums. It's actually an international community of museum changemakers, but I'm also a visual artist for the past decade. I've been using photographs and videos of nature to create sci-fi infused landscapes. And I'm super new in the NFT art space, actually, for the past months only. But I've been following the field for the past 3 years, more or less. I am actually on Artnome, and it's a wow journey. And I'm also starting to be art collector, so it's quite fabulous. Thanks.
Great stuff. And Colborn.
Hello, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me. Colborn Bell, founder of the Museum of Crypto Art. My big concern in this space is metaverse experiences. What are the spaces of the future going to be? How do we invite digital creators into digital worlds and start to form, more, efficient and perhaps authentic conversations around emerging art and emerging artists? Collected my first crypto artwork February 12th. Of 2020, and now have a collection that is almost beyond management, but it's a real pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Colborn. And last but not least, Sam.
Hey folks, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Nicole. I'm also kind of wearing two hats here. So I'm business development at Async Art, and I have the pleasure of sort of going through the 300 to 400 applications of artists that we get every day, and also interfacing with those artists, which is a great honor for me and really wonderful. And I'm also an artist with a background in particularly performing arts, classical music, and choral music, releasing a first NFT in the next couple of weeks here. So really wonderful to be here and really excited to get this conversation going.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody for introducing themselves. I guess I haven't actually introduced myself, but my name is Nicole. I'm the founder of Vertical Cryptoart. I started the profile in summer of 2020 and kind of documented what I was finding out basically about the NFT space. And now since I guess 3-4 months, it's been moving more into storytelling artists and doing I guess a bit of curatorial work as well. So super great to have you all here. I think we have such a mixed kind of lineup of speakers, which I'm very excited about. Obviously, the main topic of this room and of this conversation is curation in the NFT space. You are all experts from one side or the other of this matter, and I kind of wanted to start off the conversation and the chat specifically around the topic of actually, the need for curation within the NFT space. I guess there's some mixed kind of opinions and mixed feelings around this, but I wanted to maybe start off by asking you, Jason, like what you thought about whether there is in your view, especially having been in the space for a long time, a need for curation now that it's becoming, I guess, so big and so mainstream in some way or form.
Yeah, sure. Happy to share my thoughts on that. So I think part of the trouble that we run into is that there's two pretty different definitions of curation, and sometimes we kind of mix them up as they relate to NFTs. So I think there's curation on the platforms in terms of artists that are trying to apply to be able to show their works on a given platform. And because the space sort of comes from a decentralized ethos and background, a lot of times people that have been in the space for a long time are like, well, what's the whole point of decentralization and blockchain if you're going to have curation on platform? And I think, my opinion on sort of should platforms be curated or not is that really we kind of benefit from having a variety. So if they were all curated, maybe I'd be a little worried, but I know, Rarible and OpenSea and several others are non-curated, and then there are a bunch that are curated. And I think it's even, it's still early enough that we can have, a lot of different experiments and a lot of different approaches. There's always somewhere for people to be able to put their work. And I think it's also nice that some of these different platforms are starting to take on different personalities, in part because of the curation. So that's sort of the first definition of curation. Are there, people that pick and choose who gets onto the platform? But I think there's a second definition of curation that's more like traditional galleries and museums, where the curator's role is really to select works and try to give context and tie them back to art history, and really kind of pick and choose how they're displayed relative to each other and how that changes the theme and try to tell a larger story. And I think that aspect of curation is largely missing in NFTs. I mean, there are some folks doing it, but given the volume of NFTs that are being bought and sold and created, I think we've had a hard time finding people to kind of keep up. But I'm optimistic, because I think there are a lot of people that never thought of themselves as curators and now see this opportunity and have an interest and are learning. And when I first started curating, it was only 3 or 4 years ago, and I never knew how one became a curator. I mean, I studied art history my whole life, but I didn't know if you were like knighted or like there was a magic wand and like, boom, you're a curator. And it turns out you just start curating. And that's kind of how you get the experience and you build from there. So I think it's exciting, just the same way that we've expanded the definition of who can be an artist and who can participate in the art market. It's exciting to see new voices come into curation as well. But yeah, those two definitions, I think, can kind of get mixed up sometimes. So some people are like, I don't want curation, platforms should be open, but maybe those same people actually want curation in terms of shows that put together works in a selected way that ties them to art history and gives context.
Hey, Jason, I would just add to your definitions one additional definition that is tied to the second and more traditional definition, and that's the duty of care. Curation, if you go back to the Latin root of the word, comes from curare in Latin, which is something, I don't know exactly, but it's something along the lines of to care for. So one of the other roles of the curator is to make sure that the work is protected and preserved, and beyond just making those connections and tying it to art history, making sure that those works operate, within a safe space that does due credence to the work, rather than, detract from, from it in any way. And so I think that that's something that, I'm really passionate about and really interested in, in the context of these conversations is, as we, because I think I love that you brought up that distinction between curation in terms of like pure selection, and then in terms of more like putting together context and space for something. And I think that, as these marketplaces develop and grow and more curators come into the space, that aspect of care is going to become increasingly important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was actually in prep for this, was reading a great article by Hans-Ulrich Obrist that kind of talks about the art of curation, and he goes a lot into that definition of care too. And I think the artists, really do have to trust you. One of the first things I learned, as a curator is not every artist wants to just, I've seen some dismaying things where people are putting together shows and throwing artists' work in without even checking with them. And there's really like a trust bond that has to be formed there. And not every artist I reach out to says yes. They care a lot about the context of how the work will be shown, and want to have a role and a say in how these things develop. So yeah, I agree 100%. I think as a steward of the work, but also a trusted collaborator with artists as you're trying to put these things together.
Just to chime in here, I think all of this stuff is really pretty fascinating and really accurate. And to add on to this whole trust thing, I think the whole idea of curation comes down to what's happening right now and the fear on a high level of what NFTs can actually become. So I think, as I've talked with a lot of artists over the last couple of months, I think the fear of curation comes from this idea that we will all become a centralized institution again, and that there will be sort of this barrier of entry. And I know how that feels. That as an artist, like, it's really discouraging to have to go through all these hoops to be able to try and get the attention of people to see the good work that's happening. And I think, like, the primary fear that we're getting from a lot of artists and mistrust is due to a history of this large centralized art conglomerates that sort of kind of decide which direction the entire art movement goes. And I think as long as we are able to do sort of this take a mindful approach here to curation, and a mindful approach that really values the artists. That's how we change the space. That's how we change art. And I think that's ultimately how we become successful.
Something that was like very, very special and sacred to me when I first jumped into crypto art was the idea of the artists themselves being the curators. And it was always kind of common practice when an artist made a big sale that they would take some sort of percentage of that and pass it on to emerging artists and purchase their works and begin to highlight others in this space. I really feel the artist as the collector and the curator was always the lifeblood. I feel recently, perhaps a value shift around this. And it's just something that I would love to see continue to be reinforced and adopted.
But to jump on what you just said, I think this would be a dream, right? Like if all artists were actually telling their stories, but a lot of them actually are, they want to focus, for the one that I've talked to, they're not great marketers of themselves. Like they want to create and focus on their creations, but talking about it is a little bit hard. And we go back to that storytelling aspect that is absolutely essential and pretty much part of, except the creation of the platform, but all the definitions from Jason and Wade. We need people to tell the stories of the artist when they don't want to tell it. And so far it's been amazing because we've seen an expanded population of people who tell these stories, like other artists, collectors. And it's kind of like we're waiting on having more maybe scholars, institutions, galleries, telling these stories. But it's a great start, I would say, on that curation side.
Fanny, I just want to back you up there. I think that's so true, because one thing that I'm nervous about, I haven't seen this too much, but one thing I am nervous about is the increased labor burden on the artist in this new context. If the artist is becoming their brand manager, their social media coordinator, their their own public relations specialist, their technical assistant, if I don't want to add more jobs to the artist's bucket, and so I love the idea of other people who care about the work and who really understand it coming in and providing that service and that function, that labor. And I think that one really cool thing that I've been seeing in recent months is a renewed respect for arts workers. Sarah Ludi went to her gallery and made sure that on all of her NFT sales, not just the galleries, but also all of the workers in the gallery were going to receive an equal cut of, whatever that gallery percentage of her sale might be. And so I think that this is also a really awesome time for not just for artists, but for the arts workers who oftentimes get sidelined in the conversation.
Yeah, just coming back to the question of curators, I think we're also missing the word gatekeepers, because people who are curating the platforms, I see it more as gatekeeping than curating, and I don't think the aesthetics that they pick are always based on the artist's work, but has a direct correlation to the artist's followers and the potential for sale. Unfortunately, you do see that habit and centralization around artists to have a bigger following and things like that. And yeah, coming back, I agree absolutely also with Fanny and what Wade was saying, but with a more focus on the storytelling. And I think that is what definitely can benefit. Gatekeeping, maybe not so much. Maybe there's a bit more responsibility among the platforms to consider the storytelling aspect of curating rather than gatekeeping.
Yeah, I totally agree with Fanny. With what we say about the storytelling, I think it's a key point here, because traditionally the art market has been very much related to the physical space, and that was the role of them, gathering some artwork of some artists there and just showing to people, which is now differential. If everyone can collaborate with this, everyone can share in real time their work. I think there is a need of someone telling a story and connect all these stories of different artists together. So this is for me a very big question when I think about how to combine this digital world with the physical one, which is actually, we are physical beings, so we have to live in between of both, right? So how can we present in the digital market this kind of creation and connection between the story and the art? So I think this is the key point, storytelling.
Well, if I may, actually, from the museum point of view, if you actually want to see your artwork being curated and selected in an exhibition, it's super important to convey a message, or convey a concept, or convey historical context, or some kind of values. And that's why, like, choosing right title, choosing a small text next to it, being able to documentate the production process, all these are very essential things to do and to think about when you actually produce your art. A museum curator is a storyteller. I totally agree with you, Aleksandra and Fanny. They are actually working so they can transform the visitor. They want to talk. And then we actually talk about intellectual, emotional, or sensory transformation. And what they are looking for is to engage the visitor as much as they can. So I've seen on Artnome actually a lot of things being released. Among the artwork, I've seen some artworks which could be amazing in exhibitions, others not really. And you actually see the difference by checking the title, checking what the artist wants to say, and how they're actually expressing them by producing the artwork. So I think that if you start to think about curation, it's not just about the artwork, it's about everything else as well.
Yeah, these are all, I guess, all really good points. I think it also brings me to my next kind of question, or more, a topic of conversation, which is whether artists in crypto art and in this space actually do want to have curation, not I guess in the form of platform curation, but more around the form of like art curation and storytelling. Because from my experience, as Fanny said before, like I seem to have the same kind of feedback from a lot of artists, where they're actually finding it hard to promote themselves and like tell their stories. And so the role of the curator, or more, I guess I like to say, like, storyteller, comes into play when it's about actually telling the story of the artist and telling the story of each of their pieces. But I would love to hear your kind of feedback as well. Anybody who wants to jump in, maybe Fanny, who has, or Wade, I see you unmuted, about this topic as well.
Well, I just wanted to say quickly that I totally feel this fear, and this is something that I'm noticing a lot too. It's like there are people who are, anybody can go onto OpenSea and mint their work, but then you kind of get lost adrift in the vast, wide open sea. I actually just minted last night, my very first work, and I minted one piece on Zora, and I minted one piece on Hiket Nuke, and I immediately, as soon as I minted the second one, about 5 minutes later, I went back to the site and I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't even find my own NFT. I eventually, remembered the link and got in and, synced my wallet, and it was fine. But, this is something that I think this is like a really big challenge, right? Because you don't want to create a structure that is gatekeeping people, that's preventing people from participating in any way. But at the same time, what happens when you get lost in kind of the noise of just the volume of people who are participating? And that, I think, is really the biggest challenge that we as curators have to face.
I think a lot of this NFT movement is about restoring some level of control and power to the artists themselves. And one of the things that I've seen from the very beginning of NFTs, when more traditional digital artists would tell me they wanted to dip their toe in, is I'm a little afraid if I put my work in. So let's say I make, I'm going to oversimplify, but like glitchy, bright skulls or whatever, that I'm going to be put next to like traditional landscape paintings or something like that. And it does appear that a lot of the platforms, the curation in terms of where the works appear relative to other works, is really just dictated on sequence. So it's like whoever mints next goes above the next person. And there's something sort of democratic about that, but there's also a loss of control for the artist in terms of the context. So I think while we all have some reservation about curation in terms of which artists get on a platform and which ones don't, it would be great to see on these platforms a little more curation in terms of the default view when people come to check out the platform. So I don't think that has to be putting certain artists above other artists, but maybe opening it up so that people can create different views that are slightly more meaningful and not just defaulting to the sequence in terms of who minted when, because that's kind of what I see. It's, the different views on the platforms are, okay, by default, who minted when, so this one came and then this one came, or which ones are selling for the most, right? And I think those are maybe two very unmeaningful ways to curate works. So it'd be great to see more tools on the platforms where people can maybe create a variety of views, and you can go in and look at the works through somebody else's viewpoint and how they see they would like to cluster the work, or maybe the artists get a little more agency over how their work is shown on the platform.
What is actually amazing with the Iketon community is that you start to see developers and creative coders using this feed of new objects being minted and creating visualizations. And I think giving this freedom to everyone to actually not curate, but to place in a virtual space the objects, and actually to give the opportunity to see the feed differently is awesome. And maybe we don't need a curator. We don't need this storyteller or this gatekeeper. But maybe we just need a good experience and to actually enjoy the feed, enjoy this movement of artworks and this movement of scenes, because they're not all artworks. But yeah, I would love to see new ways of showing actually artworks on Iketon, and the communities are actually already working on it.
It's also a question of what do we expect the storyteller, like who do we expect that storyteller to be? Like, is it really the role of the platform to do that? Because there's two ways to see their role. If it's a full like similar to Artsy's website, where like you go there, you get all the details, you can do the transactions, or like do we see the new like NFT marketplaces as more the way to like in a decentralized way for the artists to mint their work, transact them, get royalties, and then the whole storytelling might actually belong somewhere else. The metaverses with like crypto voxel exhibitions, like other. And I don't want to say gallery, but like other curated websites. Like it's kind of what we expect, and I would love to hear Sam, like what you think as Async's role in there.
I think it's definitely mixed. We always want to try and promote the works of artists that are really making taking a stance on something. So we as a platform have basically made the conscious decision that we're not interested in, very quick cat.
Oh, did we lose some? Yeah, I think so. In the meantime, whilst he's back, I was wondering, actually, Colborn, what's your thought on this? And as a collector, like, what do you think about curation? Is it something that you think brings value to a collector?
Use the programmable meeting.
Oh.
With that being said,
Sam, I think we lost you for a second there. So there's like the last minute that we didn't hear, or you cut off.
Whoops. Okay. So what I was just saying is that we as a platform have made the conscious decision to choose works and promote works that make a social impact. So this is why we took on Micah Johnson's Sovereignty and several other pieces, because we can showcase how the programmable medium and how digital artwork can make a difference in society, especially like in person and so on and so forth. I would say, like, in terms of curation long term, you as a platform, you kind of have to make a choice at a certain point. With a limited amount of personnel, I think it's really important. You have to like make the decision of like, are you going to are you going to continue to produce technology, or are you gonna also showcase the artist? And I think there's a balance there. I don't think that async art I think that there's a certain threshold that platforms can create and curate, but a lot of it really does fall upon other folks, like Vertical Cryptoart and other platforms that can really, really do justice to the platform. I think for us, the priority is like developing the technology and doing a little bit of the curation, but ultimately we want to be able to find people and curators to tell the story, to do it in a masterful.
Well, yes, Sam, that's where folks like me come in. And so what I would love to start seeing is more platforms hiring, digital art curators, folks who really know the work, who have studied the work, who are embedded in the communities of the artists, because I think that those are some of the, bringing in those trusted voices who are, tried and true in terms of telling those stories in the best way that is closest to, I think, the artist's intention. And so, like, something that, what I want to see kind of emerge, and what I'm already starting to slowly see, is those galleries and those spaces that have been champions of those different kinds of artists coming together and making their own curated spaces within marketplaces. Feltzine is a really great example of this. They've always been curating really excellent work in the 3D space, and have started curating their own selections of work from their collection on Super Rare and on Foundation. And we at Transfer Gallery, we just put out this big show, and we're releasing 50 works that are available for sale, some of them as NFTs, some of them not as NFTs, but we felt that, like, as a group that has been working with these artists for so many years, who has been selling the work as a different kind of non-fungible token, as a certified physical contract, we felt like we have the this is something that we can offer and that we can provide in this space. We can bring some curation, and we can bring some of that care in. And so what I would love to start seeing is more collaboration between platforms, technology producers, and then the, arts advocates.
I just want to quickly add to that. I love what you're saying, and just a side note, would love to connect with you separately from this. Async actually does have a marketing advocacy program, and we do welcome different types of entities to come in and advocate for our artists, because we get these types of requests all the time. An artist comes and he's like, or he or she is like, I've just minted this piece, and it's like this super complicated thing, and I don't know how to market it. I'm not a marketing person, I'm an artist. And so we have a cache of several different marketing advocates that actually will talk with the artist, hear their vision, clarify it, and then also promote it on the various channels that they have. So definitely, obviously this program is in very baby stages in terms of async art, but it is something that we have seen immense success with in the past, and we hope to continue expanding that.
That's awesome. Really cool to hear.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, it's absolutely true though that the role of the curator in this space, at least with our example, and back to the question, we received quite a lot of requests as well, both from artists and platforms, to sort of represent the story. Is not just curating, but it actually is almost like a digital marketing / PR agency in a way, because it's all part of the storytelling, and the storytelling doesn't have to take place on the platform. I think the storytelling is actually the narrative you're disseminating across many different platforms, including Clubhouse. Everyone loves to promote their arts on Clubhouse and what they're doing, so that is definitely a part of it. But then there's also Twitter, Instagram, and just navigating these different channels is also all part of it. At least these days, not as much previously, but right now it definitely is.
Can I jump in and be somewhat controversial?
I'm pretty sure it was Jason who coined the term speculating, right? This is a totally new form here. We are dealing with 95% of a collector base that does not care about art. They only care how that art as a commodity relates to their own financial return, right? So, how many people are in this space actually curating art for art? It's very few, because there's very few on the other side from a collector standpoint that actually cares about that the art is being presented in a way that has meaning and impact. Everybody is just applying the same rules of trading that they learned, in 2017, 18, 19, in these crazy crypto bubbles, and bringing it to this new asset class. And it's wonderful, right? The dollar signs draw attention. It's brought tremendous artists into the space. But we have a responsibility to then go out and educate people that care about art why this is actually an art movement, and begin to direct them to a thematic crypto art movement, as valid and important as any art movement that came before it, right? The technology itself, enables liquidity and speculation and fractionalization. And what our responsibility is how do we present this as a art movement and not just pure financial innovation?
Yeah, I think I would add to that. So, I know a lot of people hate marketing, and my day job is marketing. And then I do curation, as my side hustle or whatever. And to me, they're very, very different, and it's dangerous to blend the two. So there are a lot of artists that come to me, and all the other people on this panel, I'm sure, who are fine people, and I'm glad they're making art. But if I don't have a story to tell around their artwork, I think it's dangerous when a curator becomes a hired gun. Yeah, I'll curate anything. Like, you want me to curate your stuff? Hop on board. And that's marketing, right? So, which also has a value. Artists need marketers that can help market their work to get their profile out there. But I think the curator's job is uniquely to go out and find artists that they really, really like, that they want to combine in a way that tells a story. And whether I think that story can be about a crypto art movement, and that's certainly a big part of what's going on now. But there's also lots of other, groups within digital art and non-digital art that wouldn't necessarily consider themselves, crypto art. But I think, really, for me, the big distinction is just it's dangerous that if curators purely become hired guns, marketers, then I think the quality of curation goes down, and the definition kind of loses its value, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think previously curators would have a dedicated space to curate, but now that dedicated space is not, it's not a physical space. So if you're a curator who's good at telling a story, but you don't know how to make that story resonate with the audience, then how successful are you at telling that story? So I think that's where the fine line lies, because like in the last 2 months we were able to work with 2 artists. Like it's very hard. It's very hard we can't do this like mass production shooting out, it's not a powerhouse. Like it takes a long time to really truly tailor, and as you said, identify the artist, find that story, but you also have to be good at being able to tell that story. And I think that's a challenge for maybe someone who's used to being a curator in the traditional art market and just learning how to adapt the new tools through which the dialogue is taking place.
Well, I'm actually quite afraid when I see curators actually doing what they do in the NFT space. I feel they're actually duplicating what is wrong currently in the traditional art market. We talked about gatekeepers. We talked about promoting, being marketing agents, salesmen. Normally, in the museum field, a curator is bringing a story, is bringing some values, a vision, a space, and an audience. They are not actually bringing marketing and everything else that we start to see in the NFT space. And so maybe it's just too early to actually find good NFT curators, because they are still looking for their virtual space. They are still building what will be this virtual museum or this virtual gallery, and they are actually still looking for their audience and their own personality, because each museum is actually really different. Each museum has its own audience and its own community and its own values and its own message. So I think maybe it's just too early, and now we are just duplicating what is quite wrong about the art industry.
Yeah,
I think Diane. Sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to say.
No, I was just wanting to ask Diane, which skills or qualities you think a curator now should have? You know, because with all these new professions or all these new contexts, the skills have to be like different. So, what do you think about that? So, who has to be a curator now? Which skills have to have?
Well, at first, you have to. Well, a curator has to be very clear to whom he's actually serving. Is he serving his own? His own self, his own market, his own industry, or is it actually serving the good of the community and the good of the artist? Trying to understand also what is the audience, what is the message, what is their storytelling and analyzing capacities and abilities. And of course, having a space could be good, but just for instance, the blog post that Aleksandra posted like 2 weeks ago after Diverse NFTs weekend, this is actually amazing curation. It's actually coming from the heart. You know, it's not trying to sell anyone specially. Well, we just need to understand why the curator is doing what he is doing. And there you will see the difference between the curators who are just collectors and curators who are actually caring about the artists more than the rest.
I think a really great example of an organization that's doing an amazing job right now is Feral File, run by artist Casey Rias, who's also the creator of the processing software. And that space is really made by artists. It's artists first. All of the shows, they invite a curator to come in and put the shows together and create really nice and lovely context for these important works. And many of the artists who are being included in these shows are not, when they're coming onto Feral File, this is their first, experience putting an NFT on the internet. And I think that, I've gotten a little bit of insight into their program over the next couple of months. I know Julie Walsh is producing an amazing show that's bringing a lot of 3D and virtual reality artists together who've never made an NFT before. And I love just the leadership that they're showing in terms of the transparency of the platform, a way that they really are giving, I think, more agency to the artist via this more curatorial model. And ultimately, the platform's been doing really well. They've been selling a lot of work to collectors who really care and are really committed and are really interested in software art and in 3D-based art, and that aren't just doing it for speculation. And that's just been really, really heartening to see as the platform grows.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually I had a look at Feral File as well, and it's a really, really great platform. I completely agree there, Wade. I actually had kind of another topic that sparked a bit of interest as well from what Jason just said before, which is around how platforms are currently showing artwork, right? Because at the moment, the word NFT is inclusive of everything, from CryptoPunks to crypto art to anything at all, generative art. The word is very vast, and the world of NFTs is very vast itself. And there's a part of it where, maybe curation has a role and has a space to live and breathe. But there's also a part where, I guess no curation is needed or is even wanted, right? So the role of also, platforms in even, segmenting artworks by genre, for example, or by themes, does play an important part, even maybe in kind of aiding that sort of speculative side of the crypto art market that Colborn was speaking about before. I was wondering if any of you speakers had any thoughts around this. Maybe Sam, if Async has thought about kind of theming or changing the way that art is being showed on the platform itself.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's sort of like a double challenge, because not only are we like a digital art platform, but we're like an NFT platform, but we're also programmable. So really, the way that we've differentiated is that we've used the words programmable art, and we've used the words, customizable art. And as we continue to sort of like come out with new features, like our music feature, we will continue to sort of brainstorm and think about how we coin, what kind of terminology that we use. And I think it's really important. It's something that we talk about at Async all the time, whether it's in a brainstorming session or whatever, because, a single word really, really makes a huge difference here. When, for example, we've had, mixed success with the word programmable, because, on one hand, people understand that it can be changed and that it's dynamic and that it changes over time. But on the other hand, people are like, well, do I need to know how to program? And the answer is like, no, but many people think the answer is yes. And so from our perspective, it's like a really important thing to constantly think about is like, how are we branding and how are we thinking and how are we labeling these really, really captivating technologies that in such a way that make it absolutely clear, abundantly clear and transparent to anyone that's looking at it. And I don't think that I have an answer to that, Nicole, honestly. I think we're still exploring that.
I have an answer for you. I think there are time-based media curators and museums who have all of this terminology delineated, and they think about this constantly every day. For instance, Rhizome, the net art organization, they have a very specific vocabulary for these works that makes sense and is accepted in the wider community. There are time-based conservation specialists like Regina, who's here in the audience, who can tell you a lot about these kinds of things. And something that, and again, like this is something that is frustrating to see. It's that like the museum world, the art workers, like as much as a new NFT crowd loves to talk about how the traditional art world sucks and how it was controlling and all of these things, like they're not taking any of the good parts that have been produced by the decades of scholarship that have been produced on media art. Tina Rivers Ryan at the Albright Knox Museum, for instance, is working on shows that are coining vocabulary that go back to the 30s and 40s. I think that like again, goes back to the role of the curator, and one of the biggest challenges that we face is it's like, how do we kind of map these different kind of knowledges on top of each other, these intimate knowledges of the artwork and of what the work is doing, how the work is made, what it means, and how to archive it, protect it, conserve it, all of those kinds of things, with the people who know how to build the technology in order to sell it and support the artist. And so we're seeing such a polarized industry, I think, when there's so much more collaboration that could happen in order to solve these problems. Because what you're talking about in terms of terminology, those are all solved, documented problems that have been fixed. And I think it would, just avail the artist at the end of the day to kind of have more of an enmeshing of these two worlds.
Sorry, go ahead, Sam. No, I was just going to say that sounds amazing, Wade, and I'd love to get to know you better and learn more.
So yeah, I agree with Wade in that, to me it's sort of baby in the bathwater. Like there's a lot of good stuff from the traditional art world that could be brought over. But I also think that I would disagree and say that there are new things here that we don't necessarily have phrasing or terminology for, which is a good thing. So I think about Async Art, and when they first reached out to me before launch, they were like, we want to build this platform where the collectors can actually have a say in the visual state of the artworks. And, I was trying to imagine that. And as a traditional curator, I'm like, usually I get like a 4-page rider with like, a legal document with each artwork that I'm supposed to put into the exhibition, and they want certain lighting and a certain amount of spacing, and artists really care about the context of where the work is. So I was thinking like, no way artists are going to let like the collectors pick and choose the different states that the artworks show up in. And I was totally wrong. I think Async's a big success, and it's a good example of how, while we can carry over some of the good things from the traditional art world, we should be pushing NFTs into directions that maybe build, new systems. And maybe it hasn't come up yet, but that's almost what Async is doing, and letting collectors have some say in how these works show up, at least early on. I know that's what they were doing, is almost like a new form of curation, right? I mean, in that if you own the work or a piece of the work, you can kind of ultimately dictate what it looks like. So I think, yes, carry over some of the good stuff, but some of the more exciting things for me are when we break the old systems, not just because they were bad, many were good, but because it shows that we're doing something new and exciting and sort of Wild West here.
I would have to add to what you said, Jason, because there's a big risk right now. And I call it risk, but maybe that's too much of a personal opinion. But it's we've seen people go to Christie's for auction, Pat go to Sotheby's, and there is a reason for why they went there. These are like the best marketers on the market. Like, that's what they do. They tell the story. They have the audience, and this is why. They've sold so many things in the past, and if you look at galleries, like, this is a little bit like the same. Like, they were not taking a cut just for taking cut. They were actually supporting the artist. So call it curation or not. I mean, because it's for sales purposes. But I feel like we are in a very special position where all the artists who are reaching out to Async, to OpenSea, like, I want to launch my first NFT. I don't know how to do it, and if we can't find some better business model, or like some better ways to like support them, well, they're going to go back to what they know and what has been galleries, auction houses, like, and the traditional models. And we're going to go back to yes, maybe things that work, but also like everything that did not work. And I feel like this is, exciting and scary at the same time. Like, right now, like, kind of like there's this path to do things better, and we have to take that chance. And I haven't cracked the code, so if ever you have, please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, actually, I think, something that is kind of important as well, maybe, and something that is also partly could be like a role of curating or more like storytelling in the space, would potentially actually bringing up stories from artists who are not that well known in the crypto art scene, right? And who are not making kind of the big, top charts on super rare on the big platforms, but are maybe more I don't want to say left behind, but kind of hidden in a way. And I see a lot of potential and a lot of value in also bringing that kind of storytelling to life, and bringing that side of, I guess, you could call it, curation as well for these types of artists, as well as obviously, what you just said, Fanny, about like educating artists who are entering the NFT space and have very little idea on how to do so. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts around this specifically.
I mean, I'd say just real quickly that, having been collecting in the space since early 2018, that my personal interest and taste in artists as a curator and a collector has very little correlation to market value. So, the bulk of the artists I'm interested in, even today, don't necessarily sell very well, nor do I think that should be a huge concern for the curator. I guess if you need to sell tickets or something like that, maybe that's in the back of the mind. But I certainly don't, as a curator, go and look for who's the most popular or who sells for the most. In fact, that's usually the most boring show, right? Because you're going and showing people artists that they're already familiar with. So, I think that comes back to separating marketing from curation as two separate things. Going and finding artists based on their stories and their work that you want to support and tie together in sort of interesting ways, versus trying to figure out how to string together some superstar artists to, I guess, further. I mean, to be honest, I'm not even sure what the draw would be to curate just a handful of super well-known artists, because that territory is largely covered as far as I've seen.
Well, I'd love another really good example, I think, of a group that's doing an awesome job here is Feldstein and Dev Moore's in the audience. They have been curating this kind of work for, like, I think almost a decade or longer now. And the way that they've brought newer and undiscovered artists to in conversation with larger superstars has been super cool to see, and they've uplifted so many different artists' careers. And what I love about what they did a couple months ago that really impressed me was they did a drop collection on Super Rare. But the whole collection was then installed within New Art City in a beautiful 3D environment that was really clean and really lovely, and you could see all the way that these different works connected. You had superstars and stalwarts in the scene, right at the same time as you had, folks who are just starting out in their careers, and they told a really beautiful story through these different works together. The show is called Principia Discordia, and anyone can go check it out at newart.city.
Well, if I think the best example of curation in the NFT space that I've seen in the last months was during this weekend that diverse NFT artists organized. It is a purely community-led, community-powered curation, and it was
example, for us Cuban artists, having access to this NFT world is really difficult because a lot of difficulties we have here, like internet or buying Ethereum, is just impossible. And there is a group of two women called. They created a profile. They are creating their own work of great vision. Their names on Instagram, and here is a glitter splash, great from clitoris, because they are like trying to power the female artists of Cuba in these new NFT platforms, and they are doing amazing work. And just wanted to, I wanted to say that because for us that is difficult to get in this NFT world. They have been already allowed to put like 6 or 7 artists already on auctions. They started in a little platform called snark.art, and after that they are going independent by the side. They created a profile on OpenSea or Foundation, and
I just wanted to make this appointment that curators are really important on this too. Not only to make sure that there is a good art coming out from, for example, a country that is the art of or the artists that are going to represent us, we're gonna say, in these NFTs, but they are also pioneers on this. So yeah, definitely, I think it's amazing that curators have a really good place in this NFT space, and yeah, I just wanted to share this experience with you because I really saw the difference from the work. So yeah, sorry for my English, and thank you for the time. Sorry.
Thank you, Gabriel. Does anybody else from the audience have any specific questions for any of the speakers? Rolf? Hi.
Yeah. Hi, Rolf here. I'm a video game artist and concept artist as well as a traditional artist. So I'm interested in both aspects of NFTs, which is in the physical sale of paintings or maybe just the digital images, not necessarily so in the paintings and keeping them, but all these different variations on what NFTs can be used for. But also I'm involved in a project, like many projects, where we do want to create an online virtual space to showcase NFTs, and it's aimed at both artists and collectors, so spaces for artists to be able to tailor their own place to show their art and sell it maybe, and then for collectors to buy places that they can somewhat tailor to their tastes and display their collected pieces. So it seems like somebody did bring up the question of shouldn't people who want to curate NFTs, should they be participating in these online worlds, or I think you said wait for these online spaces to be built so that then there's really an actual venue and a forum for this kind of thing, rather than still thinking in terms of, you know, physical brick and mortar spaces, which we want to embrace both. We want to collaborate with real art galleries and museums potentially, and sort of mirror their spaces online and things like that. So I don't know if any of you, have given thought to that and how approachable you would be if we wanted to ask, would you be interested in participating early on in this kind of project? Rolf and the bot.
Well, what's really cool, Rolf, is that there are a ton of new platforms and technologies that are allowing us to not only replicate the physical worlds and kind of a physical experience, but also simulate way beyond it and past it. I mentioned earlier New Art City is a really great option. I've been seeing some really exciting work come out of being built in Mozilla Hubs, which is a great open platform, and even starting to see some cooler developments going down in places like Decentraland. Kona Gallery had a really great show. Crypto Voxels, Universe Contemporary put on a really great show right now called Metaverses, and even to moving into social VR spaces like Second Life and Rec Room, they're starting to build up their artist presence and create different kinds of interactive experiences where the viewer can come in and really get that intimate one-on-one with the work, while then connecting it outwards to a marketplace where purchasing can happen. And so I think that from the whispers I've been hearing in the kind of social VR space, they're kind of in the moment working on ways of making those transitions between marketplace and experience place are getting smoothed out. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more of that in the coming months and years.
Yeah, if I can reply, we are collaborating already with some people who are further along in that space, exactly what you're talking about, including VR and including, there's one team that they already create events on Org Space VR and so on, and our background is in VR and virtual production as well as gaming. So yeah, this is definitely an area I'm interested in, and we're pretty up to speed on all the different projects like Decentraland and CryptoVox and so on, and we're sort of projecting out in the future where this could all end up. And of course the other exciting aspect is potential for so-called metaverse, some level of connectivity, and another thing I'm an advocate for is potentially creating some standards that we could cooperate with each other and develop shared protocols and sort of file standards for the art. So the 2D as well as 3D objects that can be sort of portable between platforms. These are all areas we're exploring, but my question was more geared directly towards actual people, you know, curators or agents or marketers, people who are interested in helping with this process and sort of maybe inviting artists on board, or, you know, because none of us on our team have a specific, none of us have a fine art background, none of us have had experience working with galleries before. I'm on the sort of entertainment design side of things, which is a very different world. So we're interested in connecting with people like you, plural, in general.
I guess obviously like a recommendation is obviously to follow each and every one of the speakers, and, you know, reach out to them directly, whether on Twitter or if you're interested in following the conversation. I just want to give a little bit more time to anybody from the audience if they have any other questions specific to the topic and for the speakers. And if there's no other question, I think I am conscious of everyone's time, and I might close the room and thank every speaker for the great conversation and for all of your time. It was for me really interesting, and I hope it was for all of you and for the room as well. And hopefully we can have more of these conversations, especially as kind of the space evolves and you know, there will be new kind of areas of discussion that can be chatted about. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Mikhail.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.